What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and today's video is going to be about a topic that is going to affect literally everybody with the launch of Shadowlands. Covenants. You know, those groups of people that we're going to dedicate our service to or whatever because they give us cool stuff? Yeah, those things. Well, more specifically today, we're going to be discussing what is considered the best Covenant, or at least if you're looking at it from a damage per second standpoint. More specifically, on top of that, we'll be looking at rogues and Kyrians on top of all of this. You know, because apparently over half of the specs in the game use Kyrian as their best Covenant, if all you care about is like an extra 80 DPS. But let's see exactly why that's the case and why it shouldn't be with this video. So I've previously made plenty of jabs and jokes at being a Kyrian Rogue, but this time, with us being so close to the launch of Shadowlands, I felt it was important to explain to you folks why Kyrian is listed as the best Covenant across all three specs of Rogue, and why that Covenant is being rated so well. The short version that you're probably all expecting is that Pelagos is OP. Well, yeah, that's basically the point. This video is meant to explain why that's the case, as I've heard some arguments and discussions about other classes or specs finding the Kyrian Covenant to be the best option as well, though I still think that is in part due to the Pelagos Soulbind character. A big point that I want to bring up right now though is that even if a certain Covenant is say 2% stronger than others, if you don't enjoy the playstyle or the way the ability works, then there's a chance that you won't get that full 2% of extra overall damage out of that particular Covenant, Soulbind, or ability anyhow. This is, however, a double-edged sword where, honestly, 4% is a 100% increase over a 2% overall bonus, so I entirely understand and respect min-maxing, and am known to do it myself. However, there can be some situations where you just flat out dislike a certain playstyle to the point where even if it sims better, you might not perform to that level. So just keep that in mind and hopefully don't feel like you 100% have to choose a certain Covenant for an extra 50 DPS or something like that, as it can potentially result in you just not liking the game or the character you're playing on in the first place, which I really don't think is worth 50 DPS. Anyways, back onto the numbers. Pelagos is the only soulbind in the game that allows for 2 stat bonus effects without losing any potency conduit slots, which are the DPS increasing ones. However, the rest all have to give up either a damage or stat bonus if they want their extra potency slot. This invariably means Pelagos without any changes will always be the best choice in quite literally any situation, at least for rogues. I'll explain why that's the case in this video, as well as what should be done to put Pelagos in line with virtually every other soulbind choice in the game, regardless of Covenant. Basically, Pelagos has the only situation where both of his stat benefits on his soulbind tree can be accessed regardless of which path you take, as one is the very first one and one is the very last one. Combat Meditation is the first ability on his soulbind tree, and basically what this will do is whenever you use Echoing Reprimand, you'll gain a mastery bonus for 7.5 seconds. You'll then expel orbs that, if picked up, will increase the duration of this mastery bonus by up to about 8 seconds or so, as it's like 2.3 seconds per orb, which is kinda weird. They tuned this soulbind trait down recently, hence the kinda weird numbers. Mastery buffs are always kind of unusual because mastery doesn't scale the same way between any 2 specs in the game, so giving mastery as a bonus can have stronger or weaker impacts depending on what you're playing as. The other and much more obvious elephant in the room I'm sure will be finally tuned down specifically because I'm making this video is Let Go of the Past. This is the final trait in his soulbind tree, and basically it's a flat 5% versatility buff that has 100% uptime as long as you can hit a different move once every 10 seconds. Yup, that's all you need to do. The buff has a 10-second long duration, and you gain 1% versatility for every move you use that isn't a repeat of the previous move. So quite literally within the first maybe like 8 or 9 seconds of your encounter, you'll have a 5% versatility buff up the entire time, as long as you can hit something. I normally don't point out such obvious issues with the game, but seriously, 100% uptime on a 5% verse buff? This is something that should have been gutted months ago, and we're like 3 weeks away from the launch of Shadowlands, guys. Due to this sizable versatility bonus, Pelagos is bar none the best option in virtually any content of any spec of Rogue. To do a rough comparison, I did some simulations of my own of every Covenant and every Soulbind in the game. These might not be 100% accurate for all situations, but I tried to keep this as consistent as possible. I did all of these as Outlaw with the exact same gear for all Covenants and Soulbinds. I also chose not to use any legendaries in these sims either, though I doubt the ones I would have chosen would have affected these results much other than affecting maybe the overall damage like a little bit. From the absolute best Soulbind and Covenant in single target performance to the worst, it was about a 5.7% DPS difference. This was with Pelagos being the top choice and Bonesmith Airmere as the lowest. Exact numbers aren't entirely relevant due to the mix of low-ranking conduits and gear, and especially no legendaries, but Pelagos Patchwork Sims were around 4,068-ish, and Bonesmith Airmere was around 30,838 if you were curious. To be fair though, that also takes into account different covenants, meaning different covenant abilities as well as soulbinds, so I also looked at comparative simulations of each covenant soulbind with the exact same gear and loadout to be as comparative as possible. I do expect each Soulbind character to benefit a certain role or situation slightly more, so this large gap would kinda make sense as it seems there are more tanky options than others in each Covenant, at least for the Kyrian and the Venthyr. Remember, this is entirely preliminary and kinda theory crafty-ish stuff, so I can't say if this will hold true in all cases or even for more than a few days as more beta builds come out and tuning occurs, but this is what I've found so far. For the Kyrians, Clea and Mechanicos were within literally a couple DPS of each other, but were both roughly 4.4% lower in overall damage than Pelagos. For the Venthyr, there was about a 3.7% difference in single target performance between General Draven as the lowest and Najdia the Mistblade as the highest. Theotar came in right between the two, so at about 1.7% lower than Najdia. The Necrolords are much closer, with my personal loadout simming only about 2.4% difference between Bonesmith Airmere, who was the lowest, and Emily, the highest. Lastly, the Night Fae, who are the closest by far to each other in overall throughput from my preliminary simulations. There was only a 1.7% difference between Nia, the highest option, and Dreamweaver, the lowest of the three. As a forewarning, while most of these covenants are modestly close for Outlaw and even Assassination, Subtlety does not seem very happy being a bony boy of the Necrolords, at least in AoE situations. This is most likely because for multi-target, you won't have the chance or GCDs to spend on Serrated Bone Spike, as you'll be spamming Black Powder and Shuriken Storm and Secret Technique and all that stuff. For single target, all four covenants are actually really close for all three specs, with the elephant in the room being Pelagos. So what do I think needs to happen to alleviate all this? Well, honestly, not too much. Let Go of the Past needs something done to it though, so here are two ideas I've had that I'll be posting on the beta forums after I'm done putting this video together. Idea 1. Make Let Go of the Past give 0.5% of versatility instead of a full percent, resulting in a 2.5% versatility buff instead of 5%. This would probably put it in line with the other covenants almost immediately while still giving that consistent and reliable DPS and healing gain. Idea 2 would be to make it where you only get the 5% versatility bonus for like 10 seconds, and then it goes on like a 30-second internal cooldown or something along those lines. This would allow for some larger burst damage areas while not keeping the 100% uptime. One of those two solutions would probably be enough to bring Pelagos in line with basically all the other high-performing Soulbinds, giving a bit more breathing room for rogues to choose exactly which covenant they want to play in terms of style, aesthetic, and just the playstyle in general. Solution 3 would have been to never put power gains on Covenant Soulbinds and instead had them only give utility and defensive stuff, and if you wanted to, maybe attach all the DPS bonuses to like a central, all-encompassing system unrelated to Covenants at all, but I guess that would have been wishful thinking. Either way, I'm entirely expecting a final tuning pass for Covenants and Soulbinds and all that good stuff before Shadowlands launches, so I guess we'll see if I'm right on this one. I hope this helps explain why so many guides are recommending Kyrian across the board for all three specs of Rogue. Really, Echoing Reprimand is a kinda cool Covenant ability. It's pretty unique to say the least, as it adds a new mechanic to the game that we haven't seen before, and it does pretty okay damage. However, the real outlier to the entire Covenant is just Pelagos and his Let Go of the Past Soulbind trait. If this video is helpful to you, then any likes, comments, or new subscribers are all fantastic ways of showing your support for the channel. If you're new around to my little corner of the YouTube algorithm, then I'd like to welcome you to come check out the rest of the channel. I do new uploads every week down a variety of content, covering things like guides, add-ons, weak auras, transmog stuff, mount stuff, and especially rogue-specific stuff. I'd also like to take this time to thank all of my regular viewers, commenters, subscribers, and especially my patrons for helping make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.